you might not think that your wife is going to gouge you for some of this stuff. All right. And she might not initially want to. She might not initially want to, but when she gets her own attorney, all right, and maybe you're like, she can't afford an attorney. Maybe she can't, but maybe her parents can get one for her, or maybe her aunts and uncles, right? Maybe she calls her family members and they all pool their money and do a GoFundMe to finance her attorney. Once she gets an attorney in her ear and he explains to her all the cash and prizes she's entitled to by state law, they start changing their tune a lot. Right. And then when the attorneys are persuasive saying you need this for your kids, you need to get as much as you can. This isn't about you. This is about the children, right? Like they really start getting into that. Your wife starts getting a little more aggressive, right, with her demands and what they can get. My ex, she went to college. She had a college degree. I knew how much she was able to make potentially because of previous jobs she had before we had kids. But her attorney was like, no, we're going to try to get you the max amount we can based on the formula. And that means that we are going to claim that you can only make minimum wage because you were a stay-at-home mom for so long that there's no possible way that anyone in the workforce would hire you. Right. So then I had to pay an extra like $700, $750. I can't remember how much, to have a vocational assessment done on her by some professional, court viewed guy that, went and interviewed her, gathered her resumes, because I had copies of her resumes saved on my computer. I had previous tax statements that showed how much she made and all this kind of stuff, right? So we gathered all this together, and then he interviewed her based on her skill set and was like, no, we argue that she can make this much amount of money, right? I had to pay for that to prove in court that she can make more than minimum wage, right? Just to try to get my alimony and child support reduced. Because the way Colorado does it, and most states do this, is they impute an income on a person, right? So just because she doesn't work doesn't mean that the state won't impute a higher income based on her potential to earn more. That's why a lot of guys think that they can get out of alimony by like quitting their job and living like a hobo. The state will go, no, you made this much money at one time. That means you can do it again. That means that we are imputing this income on you, saying that this is how much you can earn and this is how much you owe, right? And so now you're stuck. Now you're a slave because you have to go and work in order to pay off this stuff that the state now says you have to pay, right? It's basically legal indentured servitude, right? So that's legal fees, okay? They get expensive, right? And then some cases, your wife's attorney is going to argue that, hey, you need to pay for her attorney now, right? Some other costs you might not think about is therapy or counseling costs for you and or your children, right? So individual therapy costs can range from $100 to $200 per session, and children's therapy may also be required. So weekly sessions for a year could cost around $10,000. So let's say that a lot of people, man, divorce isn't just, and we're going to have episodes coming out on this, right, in the upcoming weeks, maybe even next week. We're going to talk about the emotional costs of divorce. So today we're talking about the financial costs. There's opportunity costs. There's emotional costs to this, right? The emotional cost, it causes some guys to unalive themselves, right? They put a lot of ego investment into their relationship. And when that relationship ends, they think, oh, I've lost my soulmate. I lost my kids. Everything's over. And then they unalive themselves. Okay. That's why the red pill space is important. It teaches men there's a way forward, right? Well, some of those guys, who, luckily, hopefully, get some help mentally for their mental state and their emotional anguish, and they go and get some kind of professional help, right? Whether it's with a coach or with some kind of therapist. Okay. Really, you got to pick your therapist, because a lot of therapists, they treat men the same way they treat women. It's not very helpful. Right? Men do better with action, taking actions, right, than they do talking out their feelings like women. But there's costs involved to that, right? And so also, you don't even think about this. You're like, okay, well, I could do without that. I could join Paul's beer club and talk it out with the boys, once a month over beers. And that is helpful for guys, right? But what about your kids? what about your kids, right? A lot of kids go through a lot of emotional turmoil when their households split. And now they start acting out in school, they start acting up, right? This whole time you guys have been fighting, they've witnessed a terrible relationship dynamic, right? And so now they need help. So now there's costs involved with getting your kids help, right? Sometimes kids need a lot of emotional help with that, right? That cost can add up, right? So you're looking at $5,000 to even $20,000, depending on how long you're going to be doing that kind of therapy or coaching or whatever, right? Speaking of coaching, when you look at some of these costs, working with a coach to fix the problem is a drop in the bucket. Okay. And people worry about the cost so much, but they don't think about the cost of doing nothing. What we're talking about today is the cost of doing nothing, the cost of just letting things play out. And most guys have no idea this is coming. They have no idea, right? They're like, yeah, she's not putting out very much. Yeah, we argue all the time, but that's just the nature of the beast. That's just what happens in long-term relationships. And they have no idea the financial hurricane that's coming their way. But it can be fixed. You don't have to live, just because you're married doesn't mean you have to be miserable. All right? If you learn valuable relationship skills, how to maintain attraction in the long term, how to set the tone and lead your relationship, you can turn this dynamic around. Stop having arguments, start having more sex. You can fix this. Okay. But don't wait until it's past the point of no return. And now you're talking to attorneys, because now the financial cost is going to be astronomical and you could have avoided all of that. Okay. If that's you, if you're in a place where you're in constant arguments with your wife, or even worse, she doesn't even talk to your ass anymore and you guys are sleeping in separate rooms. All right. She's not putting out anymore. She maybe gives it to you, on your birthday, if you're lucky. Right? Those are warning signs, brother. Like, book a free call with me. Let's fix this shit before you have to pay hundreds of thousands of fucking dollars. All right. Book a call. Go to call.fixeddeadbedrooms.com. Dividing assets like the family home, retirement accounts, other shared property can result in a significant financial hit, right? Often losing half or more of the value. Let's say you were smart. Let's say that you read a book like this, 20 years ago, and you started working on your finances and you've built up a pretty fucking nice nest egg. By the way, this isn't just about getting pussy, all right? This is about building your wealth and retiring financially free. It's a handbook for life. But let's say you read that, you have this really nice fucking nest egg up that you've built up over the years. You're debt free, you own your house, all this kind of stuff. Your wife's entitled to half that shit, even if she didn't contribute to any of it. Right? Let's say you have $500,000 in your 401k. She's entitled to half that shit. That's 20 years of fucking scratching and clawing and saving your money, and half of it is gone in an instant. Right? A lot of people don't think about that. Your house, man, your house. So when I got divorced, we had sold our house. This was a part of my wife's exit strategy, right? She was planning this the whole time. But we sold our house and we ended up making, I think like $40,000 in profit from that house. And what my idea was that we were going to move here to Colorado, go look for houses on the eastern slope, like over by Denver. And then we were going to look for houses over there and then use that money that we made on the sale of our house from California to put down on a new house over in the Denver area. That was the plan. But when she filed for divorce, she took half of that. She took it right out of my account, took half of it. Luckily, she didn't take all of it. She could have stole all of it. And it would have been damn near impossible to get it back because my attorney's like, possession's 9/10 of the law, and she did have access to that account. So because she had access to that account, it would be near impossible to get that money back. So luckily, she only took half, but she took half that fucking money, right? And then ran to Denver with the kids, and I had to, in order to get her to come back with the kids so I could see my kids again, I had to rent her a house out in town here, right? And then I had to stay with my parents while I was renting her a house, right? And then she used that half money to sort of live off of because she didn't want to work. And so she used that money to live off of that whole year. And also the attorney told her, don't work. Whatever you do, don't get a job right now because we have to be able to show that you can't get work, right? And so that way we can make him pay more, right? That was the whole strategy. And then, of course, as soon as the divorce finalized, she went out and got a fucking job and actually started making decent money. It was like, fucking motherfucker. Anyway, a lot of people don't think about that, right? The loss of your shared assets, gone. Half the shit that you've worked so hard for up to this point, fucking gone in an instant. Relocation costs, right? So renting a new apartment or buying a new home plus moving expenses could cost $5,000 to $15,000, especially if the man also has to contribute to his ex-wife's housing. So like I did, not only did I have to rent her a house, but living with my parents was a fucking nightmare. So I finally got sick of that and was like, all right, I got to go get my own place, and had to go get my own place in town. So for a while, for that first year, well, I would say probably 9 or 10 months of that year, I was renting two fucking houses, right? All that costs. And then, after we got alimony and child support worked out, I only had to pay that, which was still astronomical, but I didn't have to also on top of that rent the house. She could use that money now to rent the house, but still, it was crazy. And then furnishing a new home.
New episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Subscribe now.